Hello and welcome to the build guide. Are you looking for a build that can take on all content with excellent map clear speed, impenetrable defenses, that can face tank bosses and does loads of damage? Then the Spectral Shield Throw Raider is the build for you. In this guide we will go over the mechanics of the build, gear gems and links, Ascendancy choices, Pantheon choices, and the passive tree, Buster Jewels, and Jewels, followed up by gameplay at the end of the video. Path of Building link and timestamps will be down below in the description. Let's get right into it. Right here we have Spectral Shield Throw. Basically what Spectral Shield Throw does is it gives you a base damage right there of 399 to 599 for your offhand. Now it adds physical damage per 15 armor or evasion rating on the shield, and for the Phantasmal version right here, 23% to critical strike multiplier per 100 maximum energy shield. Also fires 3 additional projectiles, and the primary projectiles chains 3 times. So we want to go with a shield that has as much evasion and as much energy shield as possible, because that will be reverted over into our DPS output. Also, inside of our passive tree, you can see down here, one of the core things that we need for the build is the Seething Fury Viridian Jewel. Down below it says 0.2% offhand critical strike chance per 10 maximum energy shield on the shield, and 4% offhand critical strike multiplier per 10 maximum energy shield on the shield. This jewel right here gives us over 50% of our damage in the entire build. This is a key component that we have to have with the build. So basically with this build, we're going to be scaling our crit chance and our crit multi, as well as converting all of the physical damage of Spectral Shield Throw over to cold damage. Now let's get into the gear. We're going to start off right here with the shield. So we know that Spectral Shield Throw gains damage per how much evasion rating and energy shield that we have on our shield. So we'd like to find a shield with as much evasion and energy shield as possible. As you can see right here on this shield, I have 1498 evasion, 332 energy shield, which is quite a large chunk. You basically want to get anything over 1000, 1100, but the higher that you go, the better. That'll be more base damage that you're going to be dealing with the build overall. Next we'll go into the helmet. For the helmet, I got the Ursine Pelt. Now you can see the enchantment on there is Spectral Shield Throw fires 5 additional shard projectiles. This is awesome because this helps your clear tremendously. Now if you can't afford that or you can't get that, you can look for the Spectral Shield Throw fires 3 additional shard projectiles, or also you can go without the enchantment. But I would suggest getting the enchantment as soon as possible. Now the other stats that you're looking for on the helmet are basically as much life as you can possibly find, and basically your resistance is just as much resistance as you can get. Now we'll move into the weapon. Now when it comes to the weapon, you've got a few different choices on your base. Okay, I went with the Golden Crisp because it has 50% increased global critical strike chance. That's a good implicit to have. Now the other things that you'd like to look for is percent increased damage per frenzy charge, because on this build we stack frenzy charges. I'm particularly stacking 9. Another thing that we want to look for is gains percent of physical damage as extra cold damage, or like you see down below, gain percent of elemental damage as extra chaos damage. And the big one here is actually the Hatred has 38% increased aura effect. That's going to be the biggest damage boost that we get from our weapon on this side. Okay, goes up to 40%, as you can see. We also want to be able to fit in trigger a socketed spell when you use a skill with an 8-second cooldown for the socketed in items that we have right here, which we'll go over in the gems. Next we're going to go into our amulet. Okay, I went with the Onxie amulet. Basically on the amulet you want to get as much damage, life and resistance as you possibly can. The best thing that you can get on your amulet is gains percent fizz as extra cold damage. Okay, the next best thing that you can get is critical strike multiplier or critical strike chance, whichever you can find, along with some resistance and some life. We're also going to be allocating Primeval Force as our anointment. We'll go over that when we get into the tree. But when it comes to the amulet, just try to get whatever you can with as much damage as possible, life, and resist. Now for the rings, I went with 2 diamond rings, as you can see. On the first ring, I went with as much strength as I could possibly find, because we need strength on this build, along with as much maximum life and resistance as I could find. Now also you see 9 non-channeling skills have -8 to total mana cost. That is a big deal because Spectral Shield Throw is going to be expensive, and that, along with a jewel, is going to be a way that we are able to cut that mana cost down so that we're able to cast it over and over without our mana being a problem. On the other ring, as I said, just another diamond ring, life, ton of resistance. I got lucky with this ring. It has a lot of resistance. And then try to get, as much damage on the rings also, like the elemental damage that I have down below. Now, when it comes to the gloves, these are actually a key component right here. We do want to get the Karim Sorrow Goat Hide gloves. As you can see, it converts 50% of physical damage over to cold damage. Also gives us a little bit of cold resist. Now, we need these gloves along with a Watcher's Eye with cold fizz to cold conversion and a skill point on the tree in order to convert 100% of the fizz to 100% cold. So we definitely need these gloves. Now, these gloves are super cheap unless you get the implicit corrupted modifier that I have right here, +1 to maximum frenzy charges, which overall is going to boost our damage and everything else. I paid around 2x for these gloves, or you can get them without the frenzy charge for like 1 or 2C. So if you're on a budget, just go with the normal gloves. But if you can afford to get the +1 maximum frenzy charge, definitely go with that option. Now, when it comes to the armor, we're going to go ahead and use the Lionized Vision Crusader plate. Now, you can see that mine's corrupted. It has 50% reduced extra damage from crits, which is nice to have. You don't need that. You just need, the actual Crusader plate 6-linked. Okay, the reason that we're going to go with this plate is that it gives us, a ton of armor, which I like because that gives us physical damage reduction. Gives us almost 100 life, gives us mana leech, and the big one here is that Socketed Gems are supported by level 15 Pierce. That's great. That adds damage to our build and makes it so where we don't have to take any Pierce nodes on our tree, which is awesome. Coming down into the belt, I just went with a Stygian Vise, with life, bunch of resistances. I wanted to get my Chaos Res, at least above 0, so I got, a substantial amount right here on the belt. For the jewel inside the belt, I just went with life with more Chaos Res. Now you can go with life, crit multi, attack speed is really good for this build. Pretty much whatever you want when it comes to the jewel. Now onto the boots, we got the Dark Ray Vectors. These are like a given for the build. We really want to go with these. As you can see, these give us another +1 to maximum frenzy charges. Now it does reduce our duration of frenzy charges. Not a big deal. They're going to be up all the time anytime we're mapping in boss fights or anything. And also it gives 2% chance to dodge attack hits per frenzy charge. Lightning res, 5% increased movement speed per frenzy charge. We don't want to go without these boots. I mean, unless you can afford some really high-end like Tailwind boots, you're not even going to mess around. Just go with the Dark Ray Vectors. Definitely something that we want to stick with on this build. So when it comes to flasks, let's go ahead and start off with the first one right here, which is the Diamond Flask. I got the Diamond Flask of Curing. We want to get a Diamond Flask for sure. It's going to help us cap our crit chance. Next up, I went with the Taste of Hate. This is definitely something you're going to want to go with. You can see right there 15% of fizz from hits taken as cold. That's obviously less physical damage we'll be taking. And we gain 15% of physical damage as extra cold damage, which is, a big boost. Next up, we're going to go with a Silver Flask. We want to have Onslaught. Onslaught's given. Next, we have our Life Flask. It grants us immunity to bleeding, as well as corrupted blood. And then, the Quicksilver Flask, so we can be zooming around the maps. Now, as you can see right here, on all 4 of my utility flasks, I have used when you hit a rare unique enemy. Basically, I'm being lazy, so that way I don't even have to push the flasks. They just go off on their own. And then, obviously with the Life Flask, you can't add any anointments to it, so we're going to have to, push that ourselves. But, yeah, for me, quality of life flasks are pretty much uptime always and running themselves. Another thing that I wanted to point out real quick was when it comes to the rings, you can get the synthesized implicit modifier, intimidate enemies on hit with attacks. Enemies that are intimidated take 10% increased damage, basically, which is a huge damage boost. But to get the intimidate implicit, to get a ring that's synthesized with that implicit, right now on the market, as the time of the video, they were going for around 13 to 14x on the low end. So, I just haven't invested that into the build yet. You don't have to have that, but that is a nice way to gain some more damage in the future. So let's get into the gems and links. start off, we have Hydrosphere, Life Tap Support, Sniper's Mark. Now, these are all triggered by the trigger a socketed spell when you use a skill with the 8-second cooldown. Basically, Hydrosphere we're going to use for bosses and, you know, harder targets. I mean, it'll be casted all the time, but it's going to help us when it comes to bosses. As you can see right here, the Hydrosphere right here. Now, when I fire into this, it catches my projectiles, and when there's a boss nearby, they're going to get hit with your initial projectile, and also the Hydrosphere is going to pull the projectiles back and hit them a second time. So this is going to give us a lot more damage when it comes to bossing. You know, it's not double damage, but it's like 50% or so of the actual initial first hit after the Hydrosphere chains it back to the boss again. Secondly, we want to run this on Life Tap because they both cost quite a bit of mana, and this build is definitely mana starved, so Life Tap will make it to where this is going to be coming out of our life, which is not a big deal. You won't even really notice it. Now, when it comes to Sniper's Mark, as you can read, first enemies take 40% increased physical damage. I'm sorry, 40% increased damage from projectile hits. That's a big one. You know, you can gain a life flask when you hit a cursed enemy. You know, gain a mana flask, charge. Just Sniper's Mark is the way that we want to go. Up here into the helm, now we have Stormbrand, increased criticals, power charge on critical strike support, and Steel Skin. Basically, Stormbrand is going to cast the increased criticals and the power charge on crit. So when we come to bosses, we want to cast a Stormbrand or two out onto the boss. And what this is going to do is it's going to generate power charges for us, which will bring our crit chance up. Right here for the Steel Skin, you know, self-explanatory. I have it down here on the left click. As I'm running around, it's just going to be casting itself, and it's going to absorb, you know, a decent amount of damage for me. Next, over into the shield. So we have Blood Rage, Ancestral Protector, and Culling Strike. Okay, so Ancestral Protector is like a summoned totem little dude that basically when you're near him, he's going to give, you can see right here, it gives me 19% more attack speed on this build. That's awesome. Attack speed is pretty key to doing more damage per second. You know, and then if you cast him close enough to the actual boss, he will have Culling Strike, which when that boss gets to 10% or life or lower, if he hits them, then they're going to be dead instantly. Okay. Blood Rage, you know, I have that because when you cast that, now it does sacrifice a little bit of your life. Your life will go down slowly, you know, degenning, but it's going to give you 14% increased attack speed, which is huge. More attack speed for the build is always better, like we talked about a second ago. You know, down at the bottom, 25% chance to gain a Frenzy Charge on kill. You know, that's not that big of a deal. We're already gaining Frenzy Charges left and right with this build, so I wouldn't worry about that one too much. Actually, we'll go into the chest next. Now, as you can see right here, our main is going to be Spectral Shield Throw. Now, I have the Phantasmal version. The Phantasmal version changes your quality into Critical Strike Multiplier, which is a big deal. It is a big DPS boost having the Phantasmal version. You don't need that. You can just get the regular Spectral Shield Throw, you know, a 20/20 on that. Next up, we have Awaken Cold Penetration. Once again, you don't have to go with the Awakened version, which it is better, but you can just go with the regular. Vicious Projectiles. Now, again, I have the Awakened version. A little bit more damage. You don't need that. You can just go with the regular Vicious Projectiles. Hypothermia Support. Always a good thing. You know, it's going to give us 29% more cold damage, and we're converted all the way into cold damage, so that's a huge boost for us. Next, I have Awakened Elemental Damage with attack support. Once again, you don't need Awaken, just go with the regular elemental damage. And last but not least, we have the Inspiration support. Now, I went with the Divergent. You don't have to go with the Divergent. It is a little bit better. You can just go with the regular Inspiration support. It'll work just fine. Down here in our gloves. Now, one of our auras is going to be Herald of Purity. Basically, what this does is it gives us, you know, more physical damage. As you can see, grants 12% more physical damage. For this build, all of our phys damage is going to be converted into cold damage, so that's a nice boost. Next, we have Precision. You basically want to level this up to however you can, or however much you can, to where you could still cast your Spectral Shield Throw. Okay, down here, you know, I have 30 unreserved mana, but I can still just sit here all day long and just keep on casting. even with it at level 14. So just get it up to whatever level you can get it to. You know, obviously precision gives us increased crit chance and accuracy, which we want to cap our accuracy in this build. Next we have dash, obviously for mobility so that we can get around. And then we have hatred. Now this is going to be our main aura. You know, you and nearby allies gain 25% of fizz as extra cold, and you and nearby allies do 18% more cold damage. So, you know, self-explanatory, gives us a ton of damage. Into the boots. Now we're going to be shield charging around the map, which is awesome. We have shield charge with fortify support, life tap support, and faster attacks. So basically the reason that we're shield charging is not only does it get us around the map fast, but gives us the fortify buff, which as you can see right here, fortify grants 20% less damage taken from hits for 4 seconds. Awesome. You know, any damage mitigation on this build is great. Life tap support so that it's coming out of our life and not our mana. So basically when we're sitting there casting, the only thing that's coming out of our mana is the actual Spectral Shield Throw. And then faster attacks so that we're, you know, shield charging around the map quicker. So for our Ascendancy points, we want to come this way first, over to Way of the Poacher. This is great. You know, it gives us 20% chance to gain a frenzy charge on kill, 20% chance to gain a frenzy charge when you hit a rare or unique enemy, and +1 to our maximum number of frenzy charges. Next up to Avatar of the Slaughter. You know, it's awesome boost for frenzy charges, 10% increased evasion, 4% increased movement speed, 4% attack speed, 10% attack damage per frenzy charge. You know, we're going to be stacking about 8 to 9 frenzy charges, so that's a huge boost. Next, we're going to come over here up into Quartz Infusion. You know, it gives us attack dodge and spell dodge along with perma-phasing. We're always going to have phasing, and as you can see down there, while you have phasing, your movement isn't blocked by enemies, so we can just run around all over the place without enemies getting in our way. Next, we're going to come up this way into Avatar of the Veil, which is a good one. 50% chance to avoid elemental ailments while phasing. Nearby enemies have fire, cold, and lightning exposure. While you have phasing, basically a -20% debuff to the enemy's resistances, which is a big damage boost. Nearby enemies have 20% less accuracy rating while you have phasing. Basically, it makes you harder to be hit. You know, along with your dodge and everything else that you have on this build, you're going to be a tank. When it comes to Pantheon choices, this one's pretty much open to you. I mean, you can choose whatever you want on here. Personally, I went with Solo Lunaris as our major god. Gives us physical damage reduction for each nearby enemy up to 8%, and it gives us movement speed. I like to zoom around the maps. For our minor god, we went with Soul of Gruthkul. 1% additional physical damage reduction for each hit you've taken recently up to 5%. Any fizz damage reduction is always a good thing. For the anointment on our amulet, we're going to want to go ahead and get Primeval Force. As you can see, attack damage penetrates 5% of enemy elemental resistances, 20% increased elemental damage during any flask effect, 20% increased elemental damage with attack skills. So this is giving us a ton of damage plus penetration. Really big for the build. It's going to be those colors right there. 1 blue, violet, and 1 silver. Now we'll get into the passive tree. First I want to start off by saying when it comes to the bandit quest in Act 2, you want to go ahead and side with the Lyra. Go ahead and kill the other 2 bandits. She's going to give us some pretty good boosts for this build. Basically she gives us crit multi, 15 to all resistances, and you know, regenerate 5 mana per second, which is great. They're all pluses for the build. So go ahead and side with the Lyra. So, you know, the tree is pretty simple. Come down this way. We're going to get Precise Interception. Come over this way. Come down here. We can get some life. Come over this way. You can get our Frenzy Charge up here. Over here we can get our Jewel Socket. You know, more life. We can come down here. Disciple of the Slaughter. All of this gives bonuses to Frenzy Charges, along with the +1 to minimum Frenzy Charges right here. Then we want to come down this way. Grab all of these. Really nice. Go ahead and grab this right here, Commander of the Elements. Make sure that we grab Wind Dancer also. Come up this way, we can go ahead and grab Herbalism, grab all this life right here. Another Frenzy Charge. Critical Strike Multiplier right here. Then I want to come right here, get Acrobatics, Phase Acrobatics. Come up this way, grab this Jewel Socket, grab some life, another Frenzy Charge. Around this way, down to Depth Perception. Up and over this way, around here for some crit chance. Down this way for some more life. Down to Coordination. We'll have the Cluster Jewels over here that we'll get into a little bit later. Now we will be running a Thread of Hope on this build, the small one with the small ring. As you can see right here, we're going to be able to allocate Winter Spirit, Weapon Artistry, Aspect of the Links, Forces of Nature. We'll get more into that when I go over the jewels here in just a minute. And last but not least, let's not forget about Point Blank down here. Pretty big for the build. Projectile attack hits deal up to 30% more damage to targets at the start of their movement, dealing less damage to targets as the projectiles travels further. So basically it makes it where you can sit on top of bosses, and when you do, you're up close and personal, and you're just dealing even more damage being close to them. For the jewels, we'll start off with the Seething Fury Viridian Jewel. Super important, you know, we have to have this in the build. This is a lot of our damage. This is actually a ton of our damage right here, so we cannot go without this one. Come over this way. Now right here, we're going to want to go with a Thread of Hope with the small ring, okay? And then try to get the best stat that you can when it comes to minus the elemental resistances. It can go up to 20. Now, using this Thread of Hope, we'll make it to where we can allocate Winter Spirit first of all. This right here is going to convert 20% of our physical damage over to cold, okay? That, along with our Watcher's Eye right here, 32% of physical damage converted to cold while affected by hatred. So that's a total of 50%. And then if you remember, with our gloves right here, we get 50% converted to cold. So that makes it that we're converting all 100% of our physical damage over to cold damage. Now, the Watcher's Eyes can run a little bit pricey. I think I paid around 15x for this one right here. I'm not sure what the price is at the time of this video. So if at first you cannot afford a Watcher's Eye, you're going to want to take this node and the one right before it, which will also convert another 20% of physical damage over to cold damage. So these two nodes, along with your gloves, will make it to where you have 90% of your fizz to cold damage. You will be missing that 10%. I mean, it'll be a little bit of damage that you'll be missing, but until you can get that Watcher's Eye, this will do with just these two nodes. So if you can get the Watcher's Eye, just do this one node. If you can't, do both these nodes right here, along with the gloves. Next, you know, along with the Thread of Hope, we're also going to be able to get Weapon Artistry, Aspect of the Jinx, Forces of Nature. These are all great for the build, high damage output. Now, we have the Watcher's Eye right here. Obviously, you want to go with the mod 32% of physical damage converted over to cold damage while affected by hatred. You know, as you can see, it goes between 25 and 40%. You want to at least get that number to 30% to get the full 100% conversion if you do go with the Watcher's Eye. Now, another important one is right here, the Replica Conqueror's Efficiency. If you remember, on our ring, we have the minus to total mana cost right here, and then with this gives us another -9 to total mana cost, because like I said earlier, you know, it brings the Spectral Shield Throw down to 6 mana cost for me right now. If I didn't have those, I'd be paying a ton for mana cost of that, and I wouldn't be able to just sit there and cast it over and over again. So you're definitely going to want to have this one in the build. This one's not too expensive, you know. On our final jewel right here, we want to go with Corrupted Blood. You know, try to get a Corrupted Blood jewel if you can. You don't have to have it, but aside from that, you want to get damage, you know, as far as whether it's cold damage, critical strike chance, crit multi, attack speed, and then try to get some maximum life on your jewel as well. As for the cluster jewels, we're going to start off right here with the large cluster. You want to try to get Feed the Fury, Fuel the Fight, and Smite the Weak. Now, if you get all three of those on your large cluster, and also try to make sure that it's innate passive, you can see right here, you know, we just have to allocate 3 total right here. So we get Smite the Weak, and we get Feed the Fury. We can just go ahead and leave Fuel the Fight out. You know, it gives us a little bit of damage and Mana Leech, but if you remember correctly, we're already getting Mana Leech right here from our chest. So we can go ahead and leave that one out, save all 3 of these points right here. Now, the jewel that I went with on this base is 1% increased damage over time with bow skills. You know, basically I'm just losing this one node right here. It's not that big of a deal. You know, you can go ahead and get like an attack damage large cluster if you wanted to, for that little bit more damage. Into our mediums, you know, on our first medium, I have Pressure Points and Quick Getaway. Pressure Points, your critical strikes have a 5% chance to deal double damage, which is great. You know, and 30% increased crit chance. Over here on our other medium cluster, we have Pressure Points and Quick Getaway. You know, Pressure Points is pretty huge altogether with the other Pressure Points on the other medium jewel. That gives us a 10% chance to deal double damage. very big DPS boost, also more critical strike chance. And then, you know, quick getaway again, attack speed, movement speed, crit chance, all great for the build. You know, these two are down here, Smite the Weak and Feed the Fury. Feed the Fury gives us life leech, you know, damage while leeching and attack speed. Smite the Weak is good because it's going to maim our enemies, and, you know, enemies that are maimed, as you can see at the bottom, have 30% reduced movement speed, and also maimed enemies take 40% increased attack damage, big DPS boost. That's what we're going to want to go with on our cluster jewels. Now, if you guys have any questions on the build, or if you feel that I missed anything or left anything out, you know, just hit me up down in the comments below. I always try to get back in a timely fashion, and I will answer anything that I can and help you in any way that I can. If this guide was helpful, please don't forget to subscribe. I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys with some gameplay footage. Thank you for watching.